What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Aftersound here, bringing you Splinterlands content every single day. We also stream right here on this channel every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday morning, so come by and say hello. All right, well, there's been a lot of back and forth about the upcoming changes to the requirements to play in certain leagues, and namely, that is the CP, or collection power, versus the upcoming SPS requirements or SPS staking requirement. Now, that has been put on the roadmap for Q2 of this year, 2023, and we don't really have any more details outside of that. We know that it is coming, and we know that it is something that has been discussed during previous town halls, but aside from replacing CP with SPS staking, that's really all we have. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to CP, I think that, as the team has said, it is definitely an imperfect solution for this. And when I think about SPS staking as a requirement versus CP, again, just in a vacuum, not considering all the baggage and history and everything else that's been going on within the game, it makes sense for a couple of reasons. And then it doesn't make sense for a very specific one. So I want to try and play both sides here, even though I am very much in support of it. To tell you my biases right off the bat, right off the bat, I should say, right off the beginning, right off the bat. So when it comes down to it, there's one fundamental difference between CP and SPS, and that is that CP is ultimately inflationary. SPS is not, at least not at this point in time, because there is a hard cap of 3 billion tokens, of which we've already burned some and will potentially burn more in the future. So when it comes to CP, that is determined by cards, right? How many cards do you have in your collection? And more importantly, the level of those cards, the value that they have will, do you have enough to make it? So for example, like in Diamond 3 Modern, in order to make it into Diamond, you need 125,000. But the reason the team looks at it as something that is imperfect is because you could essentially have a bunch of level 1 cards, but if you have enough of them to reach the 125,000 power required, you could technically make it into Diamond. And that would happen frequently due to the fact that there is a ton of ratings inflation and lots of bot farms that just play against each other all day long and essentially move their way up the ranks or up the rating system. So the card leveling update that went in fall of last year, or in the Q4 of last year, I should say, where now in order to earn at the higher levels, you do need to at least have a card maxed for the level below. So for example, if I want to earn maximum amount of rewards in Diamond, the card does need to be maxed for gold. And if it is not, then you only receive like fractions, right? Or however much from your team. So in that way, like I said, it's imperfect, but with that card level requirement being put into place, that if you remove the CP requirement from there, that does cover it to a certain extent, where now you won't have all of these bots being able to come in. So then the question becomes, well, why do we need, SPS requirements at all? If all you need essentially is just that, then what is the point of the SPS requirements? Well, this is where the flaw comes in, right? Or at least the counter argument. And I've heard this put both ways, and I like the idea of it in terms of the arguments for it and the arguments against it, but I'll break it down quickly here. If there's no SPS requirement, then essentially you could have unlimited amounts of players playing at the highest levels eventually. Why? Because if it just comes down to CP or leveling up the cards are inflationary. Like, think about it. We have, or some people think that we have way too many Chaos Legion cards, for example. We have way more rewards cards that were printed, right, from August of 2021 or September of 2021 up until now that are about to go out of print. And we are about to introduce a new set of reward cards. There's 43 of them. We also have an untapped set, right, with Rift Watchers, where we're not even close to like halfway. I don't think we've even purchased a third of the packs in that are available or will be available. And then there's talk of a mini set coming in sometime later in Q2. And then of course, Rebellion sometime later this year. So cards are just coming from everywhere. And the fact is, if you only need X amount of CP or X amount of cards or whatever to get to the highest levels, well, then there's no gate. You could essentially have 1 million people playing in Champion at some point in the future. That actually sounds amazing. in some instances, right? In fact, like when I think about it, I'm just like, well, if Splinterlands ever wants to scale up, like we want to see the game with that many players involved, right? We want to see this game have reach the masses in a sense. So why does the other side of the argument? What is the appeal of the other side of the argument, where you would essentially gate the ability to play at the higher levels, even if you have the cards for it, with SPS? Well, because SPS is what's that called? Hard capped, and again, 3 billion, right? Now, what you're doing is putting in this requirement and saying that, well, only X amount of people will be able to play at the highest level, or the second highest level, or gold, or silver, or bronze. Or actually, what you're really saying is now X amount of people will be able to play this game at all. Now, to me, I find that very limiting, but there's also something valuable in the sense of scarcity that comes with it, because now it's just like, well, think about it this way. Right. And I don't like, I guess we could bust out the calculator if you really wanted to. I mean, imagine, for example, I've seen numbers thrown out there, but let's say if you wanted to play in Champion, that you would need to have 100,000 SPS staked, right? It's a lot. It's significant in my opinion, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but the point is that let's say you needed 100,000. Well, all of a sudden, now check this out. You got 3 billion total SPS. That's a lot of zeros. You divide that by 100,000. And now you can only have ever 30,000 people playing in Champion versus the unlimited amount that you could have before. But here's the thing. Those 30,000 people playing in Champion, in order for them to play in Champion, this means that no SPS should be burned. We already know that some of it already has been. But more importantly, not only is no SPS burned, but nobody else will be able to play in any of the other leagues, right? Because you would essentially eat up all of that SPS across 30,000 accounts, and that would be it. And these accounts would get all of those rewards from Champion. Again, nobody would be getting the rewards from other levels. Now, the thing is, you reduce that in half, right? Multiply this by 2 and say it's 50,000. Well, all of a sudden now we're at 60,000 players. 50,000 SPS stake would mean 60,000 players can play in Champion. But again, it's not that easy, or it's not that clean, because there are people who will be earning SPS, or have a couple of SPS here, or whatever the case is. And if you want to look at it on the flip side, let's say we do 3 billion once again to play in bronze, for example, right? So now divided by 1,000 means that you're able to have 3 million players playing, right? Which is a lot considering where we're at right now. But more importantly, it's 3 million accounts compared to like the 200,000 like daily active users that we have. But that's like severely limiting it. So what is this doing? Well, it's creating a demand for SPS. If you want to play the game, if you want to be involved, earn rewards, probably play in tournaments, and hopefully we can get to a point in the future where there are massive sponsors coming in to sponsor certain tournaments. So it's not just, this kind of circling of assets within the ecosystem, but actually outside capital coming in from big brands that want to show off, that want to get your attention. And so that then becomes interesting, because now it's a very open, dynamic ecosystem where you have to pay to get in, right? You have to pay a certain amount to get in. So again, I like the idea of it being open and everywhere, but something that is just as valuable is scarcity. And I think we've learned that with something like Bitcoin, right? One of the best concepts that I always come back to is, what did the internet give to us, right? We were in a place where where everything was scarce because we lived in an analog world. But when the internet came along and all of a sudden you could rip an MP3 and do it 1 million times, right, without any quality degradation, you could rip all different kinds of files. That became digital abundance. And then several years later, or a decade or so later, we got Bitcoin, which essentially introduced digital scarcity. So now that's what crypto is. There's only 3 billion tokens. Nobody can mint more unless, again, we collectively decide. And again, this goes back to like the whole Bitcoin thing, that nobody can ever create any more Bitcoin. Or if somebody puts out an NFT project, there's only ever going to be X amount of NFTs available for that. Again, there's a certain level of trust required for each level of centralization that you add into the mix. But I'm getting way outside the way outside what I wanted to discuss in this video. Reeling it back in, and to close things out, this is why I'm actually very much in favor of SPS being that gate to get in. It gives that value. And when we give that demand, that drive for SPS, that will help with increasing its value overall, because people will need it for a specific reason rather than just speculating on the price or to earn vouchers, whatever the case is. If you want to play, you're going to have to put it in, or you're going to have to get a certain amount and stake it. And if there's none available, right, or if there's not enough available and more players want to come in, well, then you know what happens when there's a lot of demand and no supply, or at least very little supply. Somebody, like, at some point, somebody's going to have to take it from me, right? And I will have to sell it at a price that I deem, worthwhile in order to come in and play the game. So again, it's an interesting concept. Will it be successful in this way? I don't know. Or will we be more successful in terms of like creating a system that allows hundreds of millions of players to be able to come in and play? Yeah, I mean, that's worked before, but I do wonder if this new system, again, based on crypto, which is based on digital scarcity, will have that kind of appeal when you think about the overall supply and demand of everything that comes with something like a game like Splinterlands. So just giving you something to think about, but I do want to leave you with a question. And this is one that I've asked before, but I think it'd be good to get everybody's opinion, maybe in one place or in just in a centralized location. What do you think, or what would you like to see as the gates for each level, right? Like, what would you like to see for bronze, silver, gold, diamond, and champion in terms of how much SPS should be required? And you can split this up between modern and wild if you want. Maybe wild should be more, maybe wild should be less, who knows? But the point is, I'm just trying to get an idea of where people are at, what they're thinking when it comes to this, and hopefully we will get more information as we get closer to Q2. But that is all I have for you guys in this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I will catch you all in the next video and see you around the game. Take care.